Hey guys, tonight we're traveling back, farther than castles, farther than ancient Rome, and farther even than the mighty pyramids of Egypt. Tonight, we're stepping into a world nearly 50,000 years ago, when the only light after sunset came from a flickering campfire. Every strange sound outside could mean danger, and surviving until tomorrow was never guaranteed. Imagine opening your eyes before sunrise on a cold stone floor. The fire has almost burned out. Your family is still asleep beside you beneath heavy animal skins. Outside the cave, the air is freezing, and somewhere in the darkness, wolves, cave lions, and enormous mammoths are beginning another day. There are no beds, no houses, no farms, no supermarkets, no cities. Everything you eat, wear, build, and use must come directly from nature. So what was it really like to be a caveman? How did early humans sleep? What did they eat every day? How did they raise children? And what did an ordinary evening actually look like thousands of years before written history even existed? Tonight, we'll quietly explore the surprisingly fascinating daily life of our distant ancestors, discovering how they hunted, slept, stayed warm, cared for one another, and survived in one of the harshest worlds humans have ever known. Before we begin, if relaxing history helps you unwind after a long day, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight. Now, get comfortable, dim the lights, and together, let's quietly walk toward the warm glow of a Stone Age campfire. The journey begins in silence. The landscape before you feels impossibly vast, stretching beyond the horizon beneath a pale sky where the first hint of dawn slowly pushes away the stars. There are no roads to follow, no distant villages waiting in the valley, no comforting signs that another human settlement lies just beyond the next hill. The world is still wonderfully wild, shaped by glacier, forests, rivers, and endless grasslands that have never known the touch of civilization. The air carries the crisp scent of damp earth mixed with pine and cold stone. Somewhere nearby, a stream quietly tumbles over smooth rocks, its gentle sound blending with the soft rustling of leaves stirred by an early morning breeze. Nature speaks constantly here, though never with words. Your home is not truly a cave in the way stories often imagine. Sometimes it is the shelter of a rocky overhang. Sometimes it is a simple structure built from mammoth bones, wooden poles, and thick animal hides stretched tightly against the wind. Wherever safety can be found, that becomes home. Inside, the glow of fading embers casts warm orange light across rough stone walls darkened by years of smoke. Every object has a purpose. A sharpened stone blade, a bundle of dried grasses, carefully stacked firewood, animal skins folded for warmth. Nothing exists merely for decoration, because every possession has required precious time and effort to create. Life here is demanding, but it is far from empty. Each sunrise brings uncertainty, yet it also brings possibility. Fresh tracks in the mud may lead to food. A flowering patch of plants might offer nourishment. The changing seasons quietly reveal where animals migrate and where rivers remain unfrozen. Knowledge is not written in books. It lives inside memory, shared patiently between generations around glowing fires. You begin to understand that survival depends less upon strength than observation. Those who notice the movement of birds, the direction of the wind, or the smallest changes in the landscape often live longer than those who simply run faster. The people around you are not the crude, dim-witted figures once imagined in old illustrations. They laugh together. They comfort frightened children. They mourn those they lose. They celebrate successful hunts with gratitude rather than pride. Their lives are shaped by hardship, certainly, but also by kindness, cooperation, and remarkable resilience. Even the night sky feels different. Without cities or artificial lights, countless stars spill across the heavens in brilliant rivers of silver. Every constellation appears sharper than anything most people today will ever witness. The moon illuminates distant hills while the campfire crackles softly below, its warmth holding back the darkness for just a few precious hours. As you sit beside those ancient flames, it becomes easier to realize something quietly extraordinary. The people gathered around this fire are separated from us by tens of thousands of years, yet they worry about their families, seek comfort after difficult days, tell stories to make sense of the unknown, and hope that tomorrow will be kinder than today. Perhaps they are not as different from us as we often imagine. The fire settles into glowing embers. And beyond the shelter, the eastern horizon slowly brightens. One by one, quiet figures begin to stir beneath heavy animal skins, preparing for another uncertain day. Soon, the first person will rise before sunrise, breathe the freezing morning air, and awaken a sleeping camp that depends upon a single small flame. And that is where our story gently continues. A faint glow lingers along the eastern horizon, so subtle that you almost wonder if your eyes are playing tricks on you. The stars have not completely disappeared, yet the darkness no longer feels endless. Somewhere beyond the hills, the sun is preparing to rise, though its warmth is still a distant promise. Inside the shelter, silence hangs gently in the cold air. The fire that protected everyone through the night has nearly surrendered. Only a handful of glowing embers remain beneath a blanket of soft gray ash, pulsing with quiet life every few moments. They are precious, more precious than gold would ever become thousands of years later. Keeping those embers alive means saving hours of difficult work. Losing them means beginning again with stone, tinder, patience, and a little luck. Long before the first child stirs, one pair of eyes quietly opens. There is no alarm clock. No rooster waiting on a fence. No schedule written on parchment. Instead, the rhythm of the world decides when you wake. Perhaps the chill creeping beneath the animal skins is enough. Perhaps a distant wolf's call echoes across the valley. Or maybe years of experience have trained your body to awaken before daylight, understanding that every useful hour matters. Slowly, you push aside the heavy hide covering your shoulders. The air bites immediately. Your breath becomes a pale cloud drifting through the shelter before disappearing into the darkness. The stone beneath your feet feels almost frozen, rough against skin that has known little comfort. You stand carefully, trying not to disturb the others resting nearby. A sleeping child shifts quietly beside their mother. An older hunter lets out a slow breath, still wrapped tightly beneath layers of stitched fur. Near the entrance, someone gently snores, exhausted after yesterday's long journey across rocky hills. No one rushes to wake them. Rest is valuable here. Every ounce of strength saved during the night may become necessary before sunset. You kneel beside the dying fire. Carefully, almost lovingly, you gather a few pieces of dry grass collected the previous afternoon. Small twigs follow. Then slightly thicker branches. Nothing is wasted. Every stick lying beside the hearth was carried home by someone's hands. Firewood does not magically appear. It must be searched for, collected, dried, and protected from rain and snow. Even children understand this lesson from an early age. You lean forward, one gentle breath, then another. Tiny sparks glow brighter beneath the ash. Orange slowly replaces gray. A thin ribbon of smoke rises upward, curling lazily toward the shelter's ceiling before escaping through natural cracks in the rock. Within moments, a small flame appears, not dramatic, not roaring, just enough to push back the night's lingering cold. Outside, birds begin greeting the morning. Their songs are among the first reliable signs that another day has arrived safely. Generations of people have listened carefully to these sounds, recognizing familiar patterns. Different birds appear during different seasons. Their voices quietly reveal changes in weather, nearby water, and sometimes even the presence of larger animals moving through the landscape. The camp slowly awakens. An elderly woman stretches aching hands toward the growing warmth. A young boy rubs sleepy eyes while watching tiny flames dance across the wood. Someone smiles without speaking. Conversation is unnecessary. Morning belongs to quiet observation. Across countless generations, these peaceful moments become familiar. Before hunting begins, before gathering, before long walks through forests and valleys, there is always this pause between darkness and daylight. It is a moment to notice the smell of damp earth carried by the breeze, fresh tracks left near the shelter entrance during the night, clouds gathering over distant hills, the direction smoke drifts into the morning sky. Tiny details often matter more than anyone realizes. Perhaps deer passed nearby while everyone slept. Perhaps wolves circled but never approached. Perhaps rain is coming before afternoon. Nature whispers constantly to those willing to listen. There is no written forecast. The landscape itself provides every answer. As sunlight finally reaches the valley floor, soft golden light spills across grass covered in sparkling frost. The entire world seems to awaken together. Trees glow gently beneath the new day. Mist rises from the nearby stream like slow-moving spirits. Even the mammoths grazing far across the plain become easier to see beneath the growing light. No one admires the sunrise simply because it is beautiful, though, secretly, they probably do. Instead, the sunrise carries another meaning. It is proof another night has been survived. Another opportunity has been earned. For people living in the Stone Age, tomorrow is never guaranteed. Every morning feels like a quiet gift, accepted with gratitude rather than celebration. Soon, the peaceful silence will give way to purposeful movement. Stone tools will be gathered, travel routes will be discussed through gestures and familiar sounds. Young children will remain close to those who can protect them. The campfire, now burning steadily once again, has done its job. Its gentle warmth has carried everyone safely from one day into the next. Beyond the shelter, the world waits. Patiently, immense, beautiful, and completely indifferent to human hopes. Somewhere beyond those rolling hills. Today's food is already moving through the forests, leaving fresh tracks in damp soil. One by one, everyone rises to greet the morning, and with the first true light washing across the ancient landscape, it is finally time to step outside and discover what this remarkable Stone Age home truly looks like. The first warmth of morning spreads across the valley, and for the first time, you can truly see the place these people call home. From a distance, it appears modest. A dark opening beneath a shelf of weathered rock, partly hidden by hanging hides and stacked branches. But as you step closer, the shelter reveals itself as something far more important than a simple cave. It is protection, protection from wind that can freeze exposed skin in minutes. Protection from rain that turns the earth into cold mud. Protection from predators that wander the landscape after sunset. In a world where danger often arrives without warning, a dependable shelter can mean the difference between life and death. The entrance is narrow enough to hold warmth, yet wide enough for several people to pass through together. A faint scent of smoke drifts outward, carrying traces of last night's fire into the crisp morning air. Inside, the light changes immediately. The bright dawn outside fades into soft amber shadows. Smoke-darkened walls rise around you, their surfaces marked by years of firelight, soot, and human touch. The shelter feels lived in, not empty, not primitive, but familiar. Your eyes slowly adjust. Near the center lies the hearth, a shallow circle of stones containing glowing coals and fresh wood added at sunrise. The fire is carefully positioned. Too close to the entrance and heat escapes. Too deep inside and smoke gathers where people sleep. Generations have learned these lessons through experience rather than instruction. Around the fire, the floor is surprisingly organized. Animal skins are spread in separate sleeping areas. Bundles of dried grass provide a little cushioning against the hard ground. Stone blades rest beside wooden shafts. A pouch made from hide contains carefully prepared tinder. Another holds sharp flakes reserved for tool making. Nothing here is random. Every object has earned its place. A modern home may contain hundreds of possessions. This shelter contains only what can be carried, repaired, or truly needed. Yet within these few belongings exists an entire world of knowledge. Near the back wall, an older woman sits cross-legged beside a basket woven from plant fibers. She sorts dried roots collected days earlier, checking each piece with practiced fingers. Beside her, a teenager repairs a tear in a hide using a bone needle and thin strips of sinew. The work is quiet, steady, almost meditative. Children move through the shelter with surprising confidence. They know where the sharp tools are kept. They know which baskets contain food and which contain materials meant for later use. Even the youngest understand that carelessness can bring injury. A small boy reaches toward a stone blade. Before anyone speaks, an older sibling gently guides his hand away. No scolding. Just a lesson repeated many times before. The shelter itself changes with the seasons. During colder months, additional hides may be hung near the entrance to block icy winds. In warmer periods, openings are left wider to allow smoke and heat to escape. Some groups remain in one place for many weeks. Others move often, carrying their belongings across great distances as animals migrate and weather shifts. Not every Stone Age family lives in caves. Many sleep in temporary structures built from wood, bone, and hide. But this rocky shelter offers something precious: stability. The stone walls do not blow away in storms. The roof does not collapse easily beneath snow. Here, children can grow familiar with the same shadows and the same comforting smell of smoke. As the morning continues, more details emerge: a smooth stone used for grinding plants, pieces of red oak are stored carefully in a small depression in the rock, antlers waiting to be shaped into tools, a bundle of straight wooden shafts that may one day become hunting spears. Each item represents time, effort, and planning for a future that has not yet arrived. That may be the most remarkable thing of all. These people are not simply surviving hour by hour. They are preparing. They are repairing. They are storing. They are thinking about tomorrow. The fire crackles softly. Outside, sunlight grows brighter, illuminating the valley beyond the entrance. The world feels vast and uncertain, yet within these stone walls there is a sense of belonging. Laughter rises briefly from one corner as a child discovers something amusing. Someone shares a piece of dried meat. Another person adds fresh wood to the flames. Home, it seems, existed long before cities, and as the shelter settles into the gentle rhythm of morning, attention turns toward the hearth itself, because in the Stone Age, keeping a fire alive is not merely a household chore, it is a skill upon which every life in the shelter quietly depends. The shelter has fully awakened now, but before anyone can think about food, travel, or the long hours ahead, every pair of eyes drifts toward the same place, the fire. It is small, almost humble, glowing quietly at the heart of the shelter. Yet no one mistakes its importance. Without it, the morning feels colder, breakfast becomes uncertain, and the confidence to face another demanding day begins to fade. To people living in the Stone Age, fire is more than warmth, it is comfort, it is protection, it is light, and above all, it is hope. The tiny flames dance gently between carefully arranged pieces of dry wood. They are not allowed to grow wild. A fire that burns too fiercely wastes precious fuel. One that is too weak may disappear before fresh wood can catch. Managing a fire is an art learned through years of quiet observation. An older member of the group kneels beside the hearth. Their movements are slow, practiced, and almost effortless. A few thin twigs are placed across the glowing coals, leaving just enough space for air to flow. Slightly thicker branches follow, balanced carefully rather than thrown carelessly onto the flames. The fire answers with a soft crackle. Tiny sparks drift upward before disappearing into the shadows above. Nearby, a child watches with complete attention. No lessons are spoken aloud. Instead, knowledge passes through simple observation, repeated every morning across countless generations. Long before schools exist, children learn by watching patient hands perform familiar tasks again and again. Outside, the cold still lingers. A gentle breeze slips through the shelter entrance, carrying with it the scent of damp moss and pine. It brushes across the fire, causing the flames to lean briefly before standing upright once more. Even the wind becomes something to understand. Too much air, and sparks scatter dangerously. Too little, and smoke fills the shelter. Everything requires balance. The smell of burning wood slowly spreads through the cave, blending with the rich scent of animal hides, dry grass, and cool stone. It is a smell that every person here associates with safety. Perhaps, thousands of years later, something deep inside us still remembers that feeling whenever we sit beside a quiet fireplace. Not every morning begins with glowing embers. Sometimes heavy rain has dampened the fuel. Sometimes yesterday's fire dies completely during the night. On those mornings, creating a new flame becomes one of the day's first challenges. A small bundle of dry tinder is placed carefully on the ground. Soft grasses, fragments of bark, fine fibers collected from plants, every material has been gathered long before it is needed. 2 stones are lifted from a leather pouch. One is rich in iron, the other hard enough to strike against it. The first sharp tap sends a tiny spark into the air. Nothing happens. Another strike, then another. The work is patient rather than hurried. No one grows frustrated. Fire cannot be rushed. Finally, one glowing spark settles into the waiting nest of tinder. A thin curl of smoke appears. Gentle breaths follow, steady and controlled, never too strong. The tiny glow brightens. Then, almost magically, a delicate flame is born. The children smile. Even after witnessing this countless times, the moment never loses its quiet wonder. It feels almost alive. As the fire grows stronger, simple tasks begin around the shelter. Water collected from the nearby stream is warmed inside carefully shaped stone-lined pits or hide containers using heated rocks. Dried meat softens over gentle heat. Tough roots become easier to chew after cooking. Smoke slowly drifts upward, carrying away insects that might otherwise linger nearby. The fire changes everything it touches. Food becomes safer, darkness becomes less frightening, cold becomes bearable, stories gain a place to live. Perhaps this explains why ancient fires were rarely left unattended. Someone almost always remained nearby, feeding the flames, adjusting the wood, protecting the precious embers from careless accidents. The hearth becomes the quiet center of every ordinary day. Around it, conversations begin through gestures, familiar sounds, and shared understanding. Plans take shape. Hunters prepare their spears. Gatherers inspect woven baskets. Children finish the last sleepy moments of the morning beneath warm animal skins. Beyond the shelter, sunlight now stretches across the valley. Birdsong grows louder. Mist lifts gently from the river. The world is waking. The fire, once only a handful of glowing embers, now burns with steady confidence, casting warm golden light across familiar faces. Soon, its warmth will be left behind for a while. Because no matter how comforting the shelter may feel, food will not come to those who simply wait beside the flames. The forests, rivers, and open grasslands are already alive with movement. Fresh tracks are forming in the damp earth, hidden paths are calling, and somewhere beyond the morning mist, today's hunt has already begun. The warmth of the campfire slowly fades behind you, not because the flames have grown weaker, but because each careful step carries you farther from the safety of the shelter. Before long, the familiar scent of smoke disappears into the crisp morning air, replaced by the rich fragrance of damp earth, pine needles, and wild grass glistening beneath tiny drops of dew. The hunt has begun. No one speaks. There are no shouted commands, no excited conversations. Every unnecessary sound could travel farther than expected, carried gently by the morning breeze through the quiet forest. Instead, communication happens almost without words. A raised hand, a slow nod, a glance toward the ground. Every movement has meaning. The hunters travel in single file, following narrow paths created not by people, but by generations of wandering animals. Deer, wild horses, bison, and mammoths have crossed these valleys for thousands of years, wearing gentle trails into the landscape. Learning those invisible roads is one of the first great lessons of survival. The ground itself tells stories. Fresh hoofprints press into soft mud beside the stream. Broken branches suggest something large passed only hours ago. Tufts of coarse fur cling to thorny bushes, left behind as animals squeezed through dense undergrowth. To modern eyes, these tiny clues might pass unnoticed. To a Stone Age hunter, they speak as clearly as written words. One member of the group kneels beside a footprint. The edges remain sharp. Rain has not softened them. A finger gently touches the damp soil, still cool. The animal cannot be far away. No one rushes forward. Patience is often more valuable than speed. A careless step snapping a dry branch could send an entire herd racing across the plains, wasting hours of careful tracking. Every foot is placed with quiet intention, avoiding loose stones and fallen sticks wherever possible. The forest seems peaceful, yet hidden dangers exist everywhere. A cave bear may still occupy its den after a long winter. Wolves could be watching silently from the trees, curious but cautious. Even a frightened deer can injure someone if cornered unexpectedly. The hunters respect every creature they encounter. Fear alone does not guide them. Neither does pride, only understanding. Hours pass gently beneath the growing sunlight. The air becomes warmer as birds fill the forest with familiar songs. Squirrels leap between branches overhead. Somewhere in the distance, woodpeckers tap patiently against ancient tree trunks. Nature continues its quiet rhythm. Whether humans succeed or fail, eventually, the forest begins to thin. Tall grass waves softly across an open meadow stretching toward distant hills. Here, visibility improves, but so does exposure. Anyone standing upright becomes easy to notice. The hunters crouch low, ahead, movement. A small herd of red deer grazes peacefully near the edge of the clearing. Their ears flick constantly, listening for the slightest disturbance. Every few moments, one animal lifts its head, scanning the landscape before returning to feed. No predator survives for long without learning patience, neither do humans. The group waits, minutes drift by almost unnoticed. The breeze remains favorable, carrying human scent away from the animals rather than toward them. This is good, very good. One experienced hunter slowly raises a spear. Its stone point catches a brief flash of morning sunlight before disappearing once more among the tall grass. Everyone remains perfectly still, even breathing becomes slower. The moment stretches into silence. Then, the spear flies. It arcs gracefully through the cool morning air before striking its target. The meadow erupts into motion. The herd bolts instantly, disappearing across the grasslands with astonishing speed. Hooves thunder against the earth before fading into the distance. The hunters do not celebrate loudly. Instead, they approach quietly. The successful hunt is treated with respect rather than excitement. Every animal represents another life given so others may continue living. There is gratitude in their silence. Nothing will be wasted. The meat will feed families. The hide will become clothing or bedding. Bones may be shaped into needles, fish hooks, or tools. Sinew will serve as strong thread. Even antlers can become handles or spear points. To waste any part would dishonor both the animal and the effort required to find it. As the sun climbs higher, the long journey home begins. The load is heavy, but no one complains. Children waiting at the shelter may eat well tonight because of today's careful work. The fire will welcome them back. The smell of cooking meat will drift gently into the evening air. Yet not every meal depends upon hunting alone. Across the valley, while the hunters return carrying their precious harvest, others have spent the morning searching for quieter gifts hidden beneath leaves, tangled roots, and flowering plants. Their journey has been every bit as important. While the hunters disappear beyond the distant hills, another journey begins much closer to home. It is quieter, slower, and perhaps even more dependable. Not everyone leaves the shelter carrying a spear. Some carry woven baskets resting lightly against their backs. Others hold digging sticks polished smooth by years of careful use. A few children skip gently beside the adults, their curious eyes already searching the forest floor for familiar colors and shapes. This is the morning of the gatherers. Although hunting often captures the imagination, it is gathering that quietly sustains life through countless ordinary days. A successful hunt may feed the camp for a time, but edible plants return again and again with the changing seasons, offering a reliable source of nourishment when animals remain elusive. The forest welcomes them with gentle sounds. Leaves whisper overhead as a cool breeze passes through ancient trees. Birds sing from hidden branches, while insects hum softly among clusters of wildflowers warmed by the growing sun. Somewhere nearby, clear water trickles over smooth stones, filling the quiet with a peaceful rhythm that has echoed through these valleys for thousands of years. The group moves without hurry. Every step is thoughtful. No one searches randomly. Each person carries years of knowledge carefully stored in memory. They know which hills receive the earliest sunlight. They remember where berry bushes flourished last summer. They recognize the damp places where edible roots hide beneath loose soil. Nature is their map. An older woman pauses beside a patch of broad green leaves. She kneels slowly, brushing away fallen branches with weathered hands. Beneath the surface, she uncovers thick roots buried safely beneath the earth. A child watches closely. Without speaking, the elder points first to the leaves, then to the root, silently teaching how the two belong together. Nearby, another child reaches eagerly toward a cluster of bright red berries. A gentle hand stops them. Not every beautiful fruit is safe. Some nourish, others bring sickness. A few can end a life before the next sunrise. Learning the difference takes many seasons. Mistakes are remembered for generations. The berries that are gathered disappear carefully into woven baskets lined with soft leaves. Blue, purple, and deep crimson colors slowly fill the containers, each one a small reward for patient searching. Farther along the forest edge, someone discovers a patch of wild hazelnuts hidden beneath tangled shrubs. The shells are still green, not quite ready. They are left untouched. Stone Age people understand something many later civilizations sometimes forget. Taking everything today often means finding nothing tomorrow. The forest provides generously, but only to those who respect its quiet balance. As the sun climbs higher, the scents around you begin to change. Wild mint releases its cool fragrance beneath careful footsteps. Fresh mushrooms emerge from damp logs softened by age. Tiny flowers open completely beneath the warmth of daylight, attracting buzzing bees that drift lazily from blossom to blossom. Life surrounds you everywhere. Much of it goes unnoticed unless you slow down enough to see it. One young girl proudly carries a basket nearly half full. Inside lie berries, edible leaves, small roots, and a handful of sweet fruits gathered from low branches. Every discovery brings a quiet smile rather than loud excitement. There is satisfaction here. Not in conquering nature, but in understanding it. Hours pass almost unnoticed. The baskets gradually become heavier. Children grow tired and pause beside the stream, splashing cool water across their hands before taking long drinks from the flowing current. Adults rest briefly beneath the shade of towering trees, enjoying a few berries before beginning the gentle walk home. No one returns empty-handed. Even on difficult days, the land usually offers something to those who know where to look. As the shelter comes back into view, thin ribbons of smoke rise peacefully into the afternoon sky. The hunters have not yet returned. That is nothing unusual. Gatherers often arrive first, placing their harvest carefully beside the fire where roots can be cleaned, berries sorted, and herbs spread out to dry for the colder weeks ahead. Soon, children help separate edible plants from damaged ones. Elders identify herbs that may ease pain or calm a cough. Nothing is hurried. Every plant has its purpose. Every season teaches new lessons. As sunlight softens toward afternoon, the baskets now resting beside the glowing hearth reveal something quietly remarkable. Long before fields of wheat, long before orchards, long before gardens surrounded comfortable homes, human beings had already learned that survival did not always depend upon chasing distant animals across the plains. Sometimes, it simply meant kneeling beneath a quiet tree, noticing what others might overlook, and accepting the patient gifts that nature had been offering all along. Yet the day is far from over. While berries are sorted and roots are prepared, another pair of skilled hands reaches for a piece of stone waiting near the fire. Soon, sharp edges will begin to appear where moments before there was only ordinary rock. The afternoon light settles gently over the ancient landscape. The excitement of the hunt has faded. The gathered plants have been placed beside the shelter. The voices of the camp grow softer as everyone returns to the familiar rhythm of daily life. But near the edge of the firelight, another important task begins. A simple stone rests in someone's hands. At first glance, it looks ordinary, just a piece of rock taken from the earth. Yet within that stone exists something far more valuable than its appearance suggests. With patience, skill, and generations of knowledge, it can become a blade, a scraper, a cutting tool, or a weapon capable of helping a family survive, for people living in the Stone Age. Tools are not just objects, they are extensions of their hands. They allow humans to do what their bodies alone cannot. A sharp edge can separate meat from bone, a strong point can help bring down an animal, a carefully shaped scraper can transform rough hides into warm clothing, a small piece of stone can become the difference between comfort and hardship. The toolmaker sits near the shelter entrance where the light is best. Around them are carefully selected stones collected from different places. Some were found near rivers, where water has polished their surfaces over countless years. Others were carried from distant areas because their material breaks in predictable ways. Not every stone is useful. Finding the right one requires knowledge. The toolmaker lifts a dark piece of flint, they turn it slowly, they examine its shape, its texture, its hidden possibilities. A stone that appears perfect may crack incorrectly. Another that seems ordinary may reveal a beautifully sharp edge after only a few careful strikes. The process begins. A larger stone is held firmly as a hammerstone strikes against the flint. A sharp sound echoes through the shelter. Click, another strike. Click, small fragments break away, falling onto the ground like pieces of ancient glass. The movement is controlled. Too much force destroys the stone. Too little creates no useful edge. Every strike requires understanding. The angle, the pressure, the direction. A mistake means starting again. A skilled craftsperson does not simply hit rocks, they communicate with them. They understand how the material wants to break. Around the fire, younger members of the group watch closely. This knowledge cannot be written down. There are no manuals explaining the steps. No diagrams showing the correct technique. The lesson lives in the hands of the teacher. It passes from one generation to the next through careful observation. A child watches a parent shape a small cutting blade. Years later, that same child may teach another child the same movements beside another fire, beneath another ancient sky. Slowly, a rough stone becomes something completely different. Its surface is smoother, its edge sharper, its purpose clearer. The finished tool is tested carefully. A finger does not touch the sharp edge directly. Instead, the maker examines the shape, the balance, and the strength. A good tool feels almost like a natural part of the hand. This connection between humans and stone changes everything. Before advanced technology, before metal, before machines, there is only imagination and patience, a person looking at a piece of rock and seeing something that does not yet exist. That ability may be one of humanity's greatest discoveries. The Stone Age is sometimes imagined as a time of simple survival, but moments like this reveal something deeper. Creating tools requires planning. It requires memory. It requires understanding materials and thinking about future needs. A hunter does not make a spear after finding an animal. The spear must already exist. A family does not create clothing after winter arrives. The hides must already be prepared. Survival belongs to those who think ahead. As evening approaches, the shelter becomes filled with quiet activity. One person repairs a wooden handle, another checks the sharpness of a cutting blade, someone places unfinished stones aside for tomorrow's work. The small piles of stone fragments scattered across the ground tell a story of countless hours spent shaping the world by hand. Each broken piece represents an attempt. Each finished tool represents knowledge preserved. Outside, the shadows grow longer across the valley. The day's work is slowly coming to an end, but the lessons created beside this fire will continue long after the flames disappear, because every tool begins with a simple thought, a human being looking at an ordinary stone and imagining what it could become. And tomorrow, when food is prepared and the day's meals are shared, these carefully crafted tools will reveal another important truth about Stone Age life. Survival was not only about finding food, it was also about transforming the world around you, one small piece at a time. The fire burns steadily as the afternoon slowly begins to fade. Around the shelter, the day's discoveries are gathered together: a basket of wild berries, freshly collected roots, pieces of meat brought back from the hunt, small treasures gathered from the forest, river, and open plains. To us, food often arrives separated from the places where it begins. A meal can appear with the simple opening of a container or the turn of a handle. But for people living in the Stone Age, every bite carries a story. Every meal begins somewhere in the landscape: a root hidden beneath the soil, a fish moving through a cold river, a herd crossing a distant valley, a plant growing quietly beneath the shade of ancient trees. Food is not something they simply find, it is something they understand. Inside the shelter, preparations begin slowly. There are no kitchens filled with shelves and containers. No collection of spices from distant lands. No endless supply waiting nearby. Instead, there is careful planning. The group uses everything available. Meat from hunted animals provides valuable energy, especially during cold seasons when plants become harder to find. Deer, wild cattle, horses, and other animals offer not only meat but also materials needed for survival. Nothing is ignored. Bones can become tools, fat can provide warmth and extra nourishment, tendons can become strong cords, the hide can protect someone from freezing temperatures. One animal can support an entire family in many different ways, but meat is only one part of the Stone Age diet. The image of cavemen eating nothing but giant pieces of roasted meat is far from reality. Plants are incredibly important. During warmer months, forests and grasslands become natural gardens filled with possibilities. Wild berries provide sweetness and energy. Nuts offer valuable fats. Seeds, leaves, and roots add variety to daily meals. Along rivers and lakes, people gather another source of nourishment: fish, shellfish, small animals living near the water. The landscape determines the menu. A group living near a coastline eats differently from one living deep within a forest. A family surviving in colder northern regions depends on different foods than those living in warmer environments. There is no single Stone Age diet. There are thousands of different ways humans adapted to their surroundings. Near the fire, a woman places carefully collected roots near heated stones. The warmth slowly changes their texture, making them easier to eat. Nearby, berries are sorted and preserved for later use. The smell of cooking fills the shelter. It is simple, yet comforting, the same feeling that comes from any meal shared with people who matter. Children wait nearby, watching patiently. They learn which foods require preparation, which plants should never be touched, which animals provide the greatest rewards. Food knowledge is survival knowledge. A person who understands the landscape can walk through the forest and recognize possibilities hidden everywhere. A patch of green leaves may become medicine. A tree may provide nuts, a river may provide fish, a field may reveal animal tracks leading toward food. The world itself becomes a living library, but hunger is always nearby. There are difficult seasons when animals migrate away and plants disappear beneath snow. There are days when hunting fails, when storms prevent gathering, when the familiar landscape offers fewer gifts than expected. These moments test patience. The people who survive are not those who never struggle. They are those who adapt. They store what they can. They share what they have. They remember what worked before. Inside the shelter, the evening meal is finally ready. The group gathers around the fire. There is no grand celebration, no elaborate ceremony, just quiet appreciation. A child receives a portion of meat, an elder tastes freshly gathered roots, someone passes around berries collected earlier in the day. The flames illuminate familiar faces as everyone eats together. For a short moment, the worries of tomorrow disappear. The cold outside feels farther away. The darkness beyond the entrance seems less threatening. Food has done more than fill empty stomachs. It has brought people together. It has created a moment of peace in an uncertain world. As the last pieces of wood settle into glowing embers, the conversation around the fire slowly changes. The focus moves away from what was found today, and toward what must be protected tomorrow, because in the Stone Age, survival is never only about having enough food, it is about knowing how to find it again. And somewhere beyond the shelter, hidden among forests and valleys, the next generation is beginning to learn those same ancient lessons. The evening meal slowly disappears into the warmth of the shelter. The fire continues to glow, casting gentle waves of light across the stone walls. Outside, the ancient landscape grows darker, but inside, another important part of Stone Age life continues quietly. A child laughs softly, an elder tells a familiar story through gestures and sounds. A parent carefully wraps an animal hide around a small pair of shoulders. Long before schools, books, and written instructions existed, children were learning every day, every moment. In the Ice Age, childhood was not separated from survival. Young humans were born into a world where nature provided everything they needed, but also demanded constant attention. The lessons they learned were not only about numbers or names, they were lessons about life itself. A child growing up tens of thousands of years ago would understand their surroundings from an early age. The forest was not simply a place filled with trees. It was a source of food, materials, medicine, and danger. The river was not merely water, it was a place where animals gathered, where fish could be found, and where changing seasons could be observed. The mountains were not just distant shapes, they were landmarks guiding journeys across unfamiliar lands. Children learned because survival depended on knowledge being passed forward. A young child might begin with simple tasks, carrying small pieces of wood, helping collect plants, watching older family members prepare tools, learning where the safest paths were. At first, these tasks seemed like play, but slowly, without realizing it, children were becoming part of the community. Near the shelter entrance, a young boy watches an adult repair a wooden spear. He does not understand every detail yet, but he remembers the way the stone point is attached, the way the fibers are wrapped tightly, the way the finished tool is tested carefully. Years later, those same movements may come naturally to him. Beside the fire, a young girl learns another kind of knowledge. She watches an elder separate useful plants from harmful ones. She learns which berries are safe, which roots need preparation, and which leaves can be used when someone is injured. The lessons are slow. There is no classroom. The entire world is the classroom. Parents and elders are the teachers. The environment is the textbook. Mistakes are remembered because they carry consequences. A child who learns the wrong plant may become sick. A child who ignores the weather may become cold. A child who wanders too far may face dangers they are not prepared to handle. Because of this, Stone Age children likely developed awareness much earlier than many children today. Yet their lives were not only serious. They played, they explored, they created their own small adventures within the safety of the group. They shaped small pieces of wood. They copied adults during pretend hunts. They raced beside streams. They discovered insects, animals, and strange stones with the same curiosity children have always carried. Even in the harshest environments, childhood found moments of wonder. The shelter was not just a place of survival. It was a place of belonging. A child knew the voices of family members. They knew the warmth of familiar hands. They knew the comfort of sleeping near the fire while hearing trusted people nearby. Family connections were not a luxury, they were essential. A newborn child required constant care. Parents, siblings, and elders all played roles in protecting and teaching the youngest members of the group. A child represented the future. Every skill taught, every story shared, every lesson remembered, helped the entire community continue. Perhaps this is one of the most human parts of Stone Age life. Thousands of years separate us from these families. Their shelters have disappeared. Their voices are silent. Their names are forgotten. But the feelings remain familiar. A parent protecting a child from the cold, an elder patiently teaching something important, a young person dreaming about the world beyond their home. These moments could happen beside a modern house or beside a prehistoric fire. The setting changes, human emotions do not. As night settles deeper over the Ice Age landscape, the youngest members of the group begin to grow tired. They move closer to the warmth of the fire, wrapped safely beneath soft animal skins. Tomorrow, they will continue learning. Tomorrow, they will discover more about the world surrounding them. But beyond the shelter walls, another lesson waits patiently. The ancient wilderness is beautiful, yet it is also filled with creatures far larger, faster, and more dangerous than anything these children have ever imagined. And survival will require understanding not only the plants and landscapes around them, but also the predators that share this frozen world. The quiet sounds of the shelter slowly disappear beneath the endless whispers of the wilderness. Beyond the warm glow of the fire, the Ice Age landscape stretches into darkness. The forests, the valleys, the frozen plains, all of it belongs to countless creatures moving through the ancient world. Some are peaceful, some are curious, and some are powerful enough to remind humans that they are not the strongest beings in nature. For people living in the Stone Age, survival was not only about finding food and staying warm, it was also about understanding what hunted them. The world outside the shelter was filled with animals far larger and more dangerous than anything most humans today will ever encounter. Giant predators moved through the same landscapes where early humans searched for plants, followed animal trails, and gathered near rivers. The cave lion, a massive hunter built for strength and speed. Unlike modern lions, these ancient cats lived in colder environments and were adapted to survive across parts of Ice Age Europe and Asia. Their powerful bodies allowed them to bring down large prey, and their presence alone would have been enough to make any human cautious. Then there were wolves, not the distant, mysterious creatures of old stories, but intelligent hunters capable of traveling great distances and working together. A lone wolf might avoid humans, a pack was another matter. Their sharp senses and ability to cooperate made them among the most successful predators of the ancient world, and perhaps most intimidating of all. The cave bear, huge, strong, territorial, a human entering the wrong cave at the wrong time could face an animal many times their size. This is why shelters were chosen carefully. A comfortable-looking cave was not always a safe home. Before settling into a rocky space, people needed to understand whether another creature already considered it their territory. Tracks near the entrance, unusual smells, scratches on stone, signs of recent activity, small clues could reveal enormous dangers. The landscape itself offered warnings to those who knew how to read them. A sudden silence in the forest, birds disappearing from nearby branches, animals behaving differently, nature constantly communicated. Humans survived because they listened, but avoiding predators was not only about fear, it was about preparation. The group stayed together, children remained close to adults, fire was protected carefully, Shelters were organized so everyone knew where important tools were kept. Nothing was left to chance. At night, the campfire became more than a source of warmth. It became a boundary, a small circle of light surrounded by a vast world of uncertainty. The flames created movement and shadows that many wild animals preferred to avoid. The smell of smoke, the sound of human voices, and the presence of many people together could discourage predators from approaching, yet fire did not make humans invincible. A determined animal could still be dangerous. A hungry predator did not understand human plans or emotions, it simply followed instinct. This meant respect was always necessary. Stone Age people did not see nature as something they had conquered. They lived alongside it. They understood that every creature had a place. The wolf was not evil. The bear was not cruel. The lion was not hunting out of anger. Each animal was simply trying to survive, just as humans were. This understanding shaped how early people moved through the world. They did not waste energy fighting every danger. Instead, they observed, they adapted, they learned. A hunter might remember where predators often traveled. A gatherer might avoid certain areas. During specific seasons, a parent might teach a child never to wander beyond sight of the shelter. Knowledge became their greatest defense, not strength, not speed, knowledge. As generations passed, these lessons became part of human memory. Stories told beside fires carried warnings about dangerous places and encounters with powerful animals. The experiences of one person could protect many others who came after. A single mistake could teach an entire community. A single observation could save lives. And slowly, humans became better at sharing the world with creatures that seemed impossible to survive beside. Now, as darkness covers the valley completely, the campfire burns brighter. Inside the shelter, everyone settles closer together. Outside, unseen footsteps may cross the frozen ground. A distant howl rises from beyond the trees. The sound travels across the valley before fading into silence. The people listen. They know the wilderness is there. They know danger exists. But they also know something else. They are not alone. They have each other. And around the small circle of firelight, surrounded by the vast Ice Age night, humans begin to discover that survival is not only about escaping danger, it is also about finding strength in connection. As the flames continue to glow, another important part of Stone Age life begins to unfold. The quiet hours spent together around the evening campfire. The darkness outside the shelter grows deeper. The last traces of sunlight disappear beyond the distant hills, leaving behind a sky filled with quiet stars. The cold air settles over the valley, and the sounds of the wilderness become clearer with every passing moment. But inside the shelter, there is warmth, there is light, there is life. At the center of everything sits the campfire. The same fire that was carefully awakened in the morning now burned steadily, its golden glow moving gently across familiar faces. The flames rise and fall like a living presence, turning ordinary moments into something meaningful. For people of the Stone Age, the evening fire was not simply where food was prepared. It was where the community gathered, where memories were preserved, where relationships grew stronger. After a long day of hunting, gathering, exploring, and working, the fire offered something rare, a moment to stop. The world outside demanded constant attention. Weather could change quickly. Animals could appear without warning. Food could not be taken for granted, but around the evening fire, people could finally relax. The hunter places a repaired spear beside the shelter wall. A gatherer sorts the final plants collected during the day. Someone adds another piece of wood to the flames, watching as sparks rise slowly toward the darkness above. No one needs to explain the importance of this moment. Everyone understands. The fire belongs to everyone. The stories begin quietly, not written stories, not stories preserved on paper, stories carried through voices, expressions, and memories. An older member of the group gestures toward a distant mountain range. Through simple sounds and movements, they describe a journey taken many seasons before. They explain where water can be found, where animals travel, and where danger should be avoided. The younger listeners watch carefully. They are not only hearing entertainment, they are receiving knowledge. Every story contains something valuable, a warning, a lesson, a memory. Around the fire, the past stays alive. Perhaps someone describes the first time they learned to shape a stone tool. Another remembers a difficult winter when food became scarce. Someone else tells a lighter story that brings smiles and laughter from the group. Even without written language, humans have always found ways to share experiences. The fire creates a space where voices matter, where the oldest members of the group become living connections to generations that came before. Children listen closely. Their young minds collect these stories piece by piece. Years later, they may repeat them beside another fire, adding their own memories to an endless chain of human experience. The campfire also reveals something else about Stone Age life. These people were not simply surviving beside one another, they were building relationships. A successful hunt depended on cooperation, a safe shelter depended on trust, raising children depended on many caring hands. The evening gathering strengthened these connections. It reminded everyone that survival was not an individual achievement. A single person could be skilled and strong, but a community could endure. As the flames move softly, faces appear and disappear within the warm light. Some people laugh quietly. Others repair clothing or sharpen tools. A parent comforts a tired child. An elder watches the fire with a peaceful expression. For a few moments, the harshness of the Ice Age feels far away. The cold remains outside. The predators still move through the darkness. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but tonight there is comfort, there is belonging, there is the simple joy of being surrounded by familiar voices. Perhaps this is one of the most surprising things about Stone Age. Life, thousands of years ago, before cities covered the earth, before written words recorded human stories, people were already searching for the same things we value today: safety, connection. A place beside others where they belonged. The fire slowly burns lower. The conversations become softer. One by one, people begin preparing for sleep. The tools are placed safely aside. The last pieces of wood are added. The flames shrink into glowing orange embers. Outside, the stars continue shining above the ancient valley. Inside, the shelter grows quiet. But before everyone closes their eyes, one final task remains. The place where they will spend the night must be prepared carefully, because in the Stone Age, even sleep itself requires knowledge, and the way humans rested thousands of years ago reveals another fascinating side of survival. The final flames of the evening slowly surrender to darkness. The voices around the campfire become quieter. The stories that carried through the shelter begin to fade into gentle whispers. Outside, the Ice Age night stretches endlessly across the valley, covering forests, rivers, and mountains beneath a blanket of cold silence. Inside the shelter, however, there is peace. The day's work is finished. The tools are placed safely away. The last pieces of food have been shared. Now comes one of the most ordinary yet important parts of human life: sleep. To us, sleep may feel like a simple break from the day. A comfortable bed, a warm room, and a familiar routine can make it easy to forget how vulnerable humans become when their eyes close. But for people living in the Stone Age, sleep required preparation. Rest was necessary, yet danger never completely disappeared. Even during the quietest hours of the night, The wilderness continued moving, animals searched for food, cold winds crossed the landscape, unknown sounds traveled through the darkness. A peaceful night's sleep depended on careful choices made before anyone lay down. Inside the shelter, the sleeping area was arranged close enough to the fire for warmth but far enough away to avoid smoke and sparks. People understood the importance of balance. Too close, and the heat could become uncomfortable or dangerous. Too far, and the cold could steal precious energy during the night. The ground beneath them was hard. There were no soft mattresses filled with feathers, no thick blankets manufactured in distant workshops. Instead, comfort came from what nature provided: animal skins, dry grasses, leaves, layers of natural materials placed between the body and the cold earth. These simple arrangements protected people from losing heat through the ground, making the difference between restless discomfort and meaningful rest. Families often slept close together, not only because warmth was important, but because being near others provided security, the sound of familiar breathing, the presence of trusted family members, the knowledge that someone would notice if danger approached. These things created comfort in a world where isolation could be risky. A young child might sleep beside a parent, an older person might rest near the center of the group. Those who needed extra protection were surrounded by people who cared for them. The shelter itself became a small world of safety. Outside, the darkness belonged to the unknown. Inside, the fire marked the boundary between danger and home. Yet Stone Age sleep was not always deep and uninterrupted. Modern humans often imagine 8 quiet hours of complete rest, but ancient people likely experienced sleep differently. Sounds from the environment, changing temperatures, and the need to maintain awareness may have caused people to wake throughout the night. A person might open their eyes briefly, listen, check the fire, notice the sounds beyond the entrance, then return to sleep. The rhythm of rest was connected to the rhythm of nature. There were no electric lights keeping people awake long after sunset, no endless distractions. When darkness arrived, activity naturally slowed. The stars became the evening clock, the rising sun became the morning signal. Human bodies followed the world around them. Perhaps there was something calming about that connection. To fall asleep while listening to wind moving through trees, to wake beneath the changing colors of sunrise, to understand that your own life was part of a much larger natural cycle. Inside the shelter, the last ember glows softly, a child shifts beneath a warm hide, someone quietly adds a small piece of wood to keep the fire alive. The sounds of the night continue beyond the walls, a distant animal call, the movement of branches, the gentle flow of a nearby river. For a moment, it feels as though the entire world is sleeping together. Humans, animals, forests, mountains, all beneath the same ancient sky, and perhaps that is the most surprising thing about sleeping in the Stone Age. Despite the challenges, despite the cold, despite the dangers waiting outside, people still created moments of comfort. They still searched for warmth, they still found peace beside those they loved. As the shelter becomes completely quiet, the night passes slowly over the frozen landscape, but beneath every sleeping figure lies a simple reminder: survival was not only about staying alive during the day. It was also about creating enough safety to close your eyes when the world went dark. And tomorrow morning, when the first light returns, another question will be waiting: how did these ancient people protect themselves from the freezing nights that surrounded them? The night continues its slow journey across the ancient world. Inside the shelter, the fire has become a quiet companion. The flames no longer leap high, but their gentle glow still touches the stone walls, revealing the simple places where people rest. At first glance, the sleeping area may seem uncomfortable. There is no wooden frame, no soft mattress, no woven blanket made from countless threads, only natural materials gathered from the surrounding landscape. Yet for people living in the Stone Age, these materials represented something incredibly valuable. Comfort, warmth, protection, the ground beneath a shelter was cold and unforgiving. Stone held the chill of winter long after the sun disappeared. Sleeping directly on it would slowly drain body heat, making rest difficult and dangerous, so early humans found ways to transform their surroundings. Animal skins became their first blankets, their first bedding, their first protection against the harshness of the earth. A carefully prepared hide could serve many purposes throughout a lifetime. It could become clothing during freezing weather, a covering against rain and wind, a soft layer placed beneath the body while sleeping, or a warm covering pulled close during the coldest hours of the night. Nothing was wasted, every material carried a history. The skin came from an animal that had once moved through the same valleys and forests surrounding the shelter. Preparing it required patience and skill. Fresh hides could not simply be used immediately, they needed cleaning, stretching, drying, careful treatment to prevent them from becoming stiff or damaged. This knowledge was passed from one generation to the next. Near the edge of the fire, someone works quietly with a hide collected after a successful hunt. The surface is inspected carefully, damaged areas are repaired, the material is softened through repeated handling. Slowly, something that was once part of an animal becomes something that protects human life. This transformation reveals an important truth about Stone Age survival. Humans were not simply taking from nature, they were adapting to it. They observed what the world offered and discovered ways to use it wisely. Beneath the sleeping areas, layers of dry grass and leaves created additional insulation. These materials trapped warmth and created a barrier between the body and the freezing ground. The difference may have seemed small, but on a winter night, small differences could decide whether someone rested comfortably or struggled against the cold until morning. Over time, sleeping spaces became more organized. Families understood where the warmest areas of the shelter were located. They knew which places were protected from drafts. They knew how to position themselves near the fire. Without risking smoke exposure, even rest required knowledge. A sleeping place was not created randomly. It was designed through experience. Perhaps one of the most fascinating details about these ancient sleeping arrangements is how much they reveal about human creativity. Before people built houses, before they created furniture, before they produced woven fabrics on a large scale, they were already designing spaces for comfort. The desire to rest safely is not a modern invention. It has existed for thousands of generations. A parent adjusting a blanket around a child, an elder choosing the warmest place near the fire, a family sharing limited space because being together provided security. These small actions feel surprisingly familiar. The materials are different, the environment is different, but the intention remains the same. People have always tried to make their homes feel more peaceful. As the night grows colder, the animal skins surrounding the sleeping area become even more important. Outside, frost begins forming across the grass. The wind moves quietly through the valley, carrying the frozen breath of winter. Inside, the shelter holds onto its warmth. The layers beneath sleeping bodies protect against the earth. The coverings above protect against the air. The fire provides a final source of comfort. Together, these simple elements create a place where humans can rest in a world that often feels overwhelming. The shelter becomes more than stone and wood. It becomes a home, a place where dreams can happen, a place where families can recover before facing another demanding day. And as everyone settles deeper into sleep, another challenge of the Ice Age quietly approaches. because even with carefully prepared bedding and protective coverings, the cold outside remains powerful, and surviving the freezing nights of the ancient world requires even more than a warm place to lie down. The night deepens over the ancient landscape. Beyond the shelter, the Ice Age world becomes silent and cold. The forests stand motionless beneath the darkness. Frost spreads slowly across the grass. The rivers become darker, their surfaces reflecting the pale light of the moon. Every breath in the open air turns into a small cloud before disappearing into the frozen night. For people living in the Stone Age, winter was not simply a season, it was a challenge that surrounded every moment. Cold was always present. It waited outside the shelter walls, it crept beneath clothing, it touched exposed skin, and during the longest nights of the year, staying warm required knowledge, preparation, and cooperation. The human body is not naturally built for extreme cold. Unlike animals covered in thick fur, humans rely on what they create. Our greatest advantage was never claws or heavy coats, it was imagination, the ability to take simple materials from the world and transform them into protection. Inside the shelter, every detail matters. The fire is carefully maintained. The sleeping areas are arranged thoughtfully. The entrance is partially covered with hides to block the wind while still allowing fresh air to enter. Small choices create a warmer environment. A few degrees of extra warmth can make a significant difference when temperatures fall during the night. The fire remains the heart of survival. Someone may wake occasionally to check the embers, adding small pieces of wood before the flames disappear completely. Fuel is precious. During winter, gathering enough dry wood becomes its own challenge. Snow and rain can make branches difficult to find. Wet wood produces more smoke and less heat. Because of this, preparation begins long before the coldest nights arrive. Wood is collected, shelters are repaired, clothing is strengthened, food supplies are carefully managed. Survival during winter depends on decisions made months earlier. The clothing worn by Stone Age people was far more advanced than simple animal coverings thrown over the body. Hides were shaped, cut, fastened, adjusted. Over time, humans learned how to create garments that fit the body more effectively, trapping warm air close to the skin while allowing movement. Bone needles helped sew pieces together. Animal sinew provided strong thread. Different types of fur offered different levels of warmth. A thick hide from a cold-adapted animal could provide excellent protection during harsh weather. But clothing alone was not enough. Movement also created warmth. During the day, traveling, gathering, and working helped maintain body heat. At night, staying close together became important. A group of people creates more warmth than one person alone. This is one reason human connection became such a powerful survival tool. The shelter was not only built from stone and wood, it was built from cooperation. An elderly person might receive extra coverings, a child might sleep between warmer bodies, someone returning from the cold would find others waiting beside the fire. In a difficult environment, caring for one another was not only kindness, it was survival. There is something deeply human about these ancient nights. Imagine sitting beside that fire thousands of years ago. Outside, a frozen world stretches beyond sight. The wind moves across the valley. The darkness feels enormous. Yet inside the shelter, there is warmth. There are familiar voices. There is the sound of breathing nearby. There is the gentle crackle of burning wood. For a moment, the cold feels distant. Perhaps this is one of humanity's oldest memories, the feeling of being safe while the world outside remains uncertain. As the hours pass, the fire slowly burns lower. The cold continues its quiet attack against the shelter walls, but the people inside remain protected by everything they have created: their tools, their clothing, their fire, their community. When morning eventually returns, the frost covered landscape will reveal another day waiting to begin, but before that happens, something equally important has developed beside the fire. Humans have found ways to share thoughts, memories, and warnings with one another. Long before written words existed, they discovered another powerful tool for survival: communication. The frozen night slowly begins to soften, the wind outside continues its journey across the ancient valleys, but inside the shelter, a different kind of warmth fills the air. Not the warmth of fire, not the warmth of animal skins, something much older, the warmth of shared understanding. Long before humans carved words into stone tablets, before alphabets recorded thoughts, and before books carried stories across generations, people still needed to communicate. They needed to warn each other of danger. They needed to teach skills. They needed to express emotions. They needed to share memories. And somehow, without written language, they found ways to make themselves understood. In the Stone Age, communication was woven into every part of daily life. A simple movement of the hand could carry meaning. A sound could become a warning. A facial expression could reveal fear, happiness, or concern. A person pointing toward the horizon might not simply be pointing, they might be saying, "Look, something is there, follow me, be careful." The world around them demanded cooperation, and cooperation required understanding. A hunter tracking animals across a valley could not rely on long conversations. Silence was often necessary. Instead, small gestures became powerful. A raised hand meant stop. A slow movement forward meant continue. A glance toward the trees might suggest danger nearby. These signals were not random. They were built through shared experience. The more a group lived and worked together, the easier it became to understand one another. Families developed their own familiar ways of communicating, shaped by the places they lived and the challenges they faced. Around the evening fire, communication became even richer. Here, people had time. They could sit together. They could share experiences from the day. They could imitate the movement of animals, describe distant places, or explain important lessons. A person returning from a journey might recreate the path they followed through gestures and sounds. They might show where water was found, where animals traveled, or where danger waited. Those listening would remember. Knowledge survived because people carried it inside themselves. The human voice itself became an incredible tool. Simple sounds gradually developed into more complex forms of expression. Researchers believe early humans likely used combinations of gestures, vocal sounds, and expressions long before fully developed languages existed. The exact words spoken thousands of years ago are lost forever. No recording remains. No written document tells us what ancient voices sounded like, yet the need behind those voices feels familiar. A parent calling to a child, a friend warning another person, a family sharing a moment of laughter. These emotions require no translation. Inside the shelter, a child begins learning these patterns from birth. They recognize familiar voices. They understand repeated sounds. They copy movements. Slowly, they become part of the communication system that connects the entire group. Learning to communicate is not only about survival, it is also about belonging. A person who can share thoughts becomes part of something larger than themselves. They can contribute ideas. They can comfort others. They can preserve memories. This ability may have been one of humanity's greatest advantages. Many animals can communicate. They warn each other. They call to their young. They signal danger. But humans developed something extraordinary. We could share experiences beyond the immediate moment. We could describe something that happened yesterday. We could imagine something that might happen tomorrow. We could create stories, and those stories would become the foundation of culture. As the campfire burns low, an elder sits surrounded by younger members of the group. Through gestures, expressions, and carefully chosen sounds, a memory from long ago is shared. Perhaps it is about a difficult journey, perhaps it is about a great hunt, perhaps it is about a place where the mountains touch the sky. The listeners remain silent. They are not simply hearing information, they are experiencing a connection with the past. A story survives because someone chooses to remember it. And someone chooses to share it again. This quiet moment beside an ancient fire reveals something remarkable. Human history did not begin when people learned to write. It began when people learned to communicate. Before symbols, before books, before recorded names. There were voices in the darkness. There were hands moving beside the fire. There were humans trying to understand one another beneath the same endless sky, and soon, those thoughts would begin taking another form, not through words written on pages. The fire continues to whisper softly in the darkness. Beyond the shelter, the ancient world sleeps beneath a blanket of stars. The forests are quiet. The rivers move slowly through the valleys. The creatures of the Ice Age travel beneath the endless night sky, unaware that something extraordinary is taking place inside the minds of the humans living among them. For thousands of years, people had shared memories through voices, gestures, and actions. But eventually, they began leaving their thoughts behind, not only in the memories of others, but on the walls of stone, deep inside hidden caves, where sunlight rarely reached. Early humans created some of the oldest known expressions of imagination in history. Cave art. At first glance, these paintings may appear simple: a handprint, the outline of an animal, a few colored marks on ancient rock, but behind every image was a human mind trying to communicate something. Someone stood in the darkness with a piece of natural pigment in their hand and decided, this moment should be remembered. The caves became silent galleries stretching through time, long after the people who created them disappeared. Their ideas remained. The process began with materials gathered from the world around them. Minerals from the earth created different colors. Red ochre produced deep reddish tones. Charcoal created dark marks. Other natural materials could produce lighter shades. These were not artificial paints made in factories. They came directly from the landscape. The same earth that provided food and shelter also provided the colors used to tell human stories. Imagine entering one of these ancient caves. The entrance behind you slowly disappears into darkness. The air becomes cooler. The sounds of the outside world fade away. Only the flickering light of a small torch or fire illuminates the stone walls ahead. Then, the shape appears. The curve of a wild horse, the powerful body of a bison, the outline of a deer. Animals that once moved across the Ice Age landscape now stand frozen in color on the cave walls. These images were not random decorations. They required planning, observation, memory. The person creating them needed to understand the shape of the animal, the movement of its body, the details that made it recognizable. A single curved line could suggest a horn. A shadow could create the feeling of depth. With simple materials, humans created something surprisingly complex. They were not only recording what they saw, they were expressing how they understood the world. Perhaps these paintings helped preserve important knowledge. A young hunter could see the animals that lived nearby. A child could learn what creatures moved through the valleys. A group could remember important moments long after they happened. But cave art may also have carried deeper meanings. Some researchers believe these images may have been connected to beliefs, ceremonies, or attempts to understand the mysterious forces of nature. The truth is that we cannot ask the people who created them. Their voices have vanished. Their languages are unknown. Their thoughts remain hidden behind thousands of years of silence. And perhaps that mystery is part of what makes cave art so fascinating. Every mark invites a question. Who created it? Why did they choose that animal? What emotion filled their mind as they painted? Was it hope, respect, wonder, a desire to remember, or simply the human need to create something beautiful? Because creativity appears to be one of the oldest parts of humanity. Even while struggling against cold, hunger, and danger, people still made time for imagination. They still created. They still wanted to leave something behind. This reveals a side of Stone Age life that is often forgotten. These people were not only hunters and survivors, they were thinkers, artists, storytellers. They looked at the world around them and felt the desire to capture it, the same feeling that inspires people today to write songs, paint pictures, and preserve memories. As the torchlight fades inside the ancient cave, the painted animals remain silent on the walls. They have watched countless generations disappear. They have survived changing climates, forgotten languages, and the passing of civilizations that came long after them, and somehow, they are still here, a quiet message from a distant human hand, a reminder that even in the coldest chapters of history, people searched for meaning, and beside the fire, in the same way stories were shared through voices, another important story was being created, the story of family, friendship, and the bonds that allowed humans to survive together. The painted walls remain silent. The ancient symbols inside the cave hold memories of people who lived thousands of years ago. But behind every image, every tool, and every carefully preserved fire, there was something even more important than survival skills. There were relationships, there were families, there were friendships, there were bonds that connected people together through one of the most challenging environments humans have ever experienced. The Stone Age world could be harsh. The cold was unforgiving, food was never guaranteed, danger could appear without warning. Yet humans did not survive. Because they were the strongest creatures in the landscape, they survived because they worked together. Inside the shelter, life was built around cooperation. Every person had a role, not a role decided by written rules or formal systems, but one shaped naturally by ability, experience, and the needs of the group. Someone skilled at tracking animals shared that knowledge. Someone experienced with plants taught others where to find food. Someone patient with children helped guide the youngest members of the community. Someone skilled with tools created objects that made daily tasks easier. Every contribution mattered. A person was not valuable only because of physical strength. Wisdom mattered, creativity mattered, care mattered. An older member of the group who could no longer travel long distances still carried something incredibly important. Knowledge, years of memories, lessons learned from seasons that others had never experienced. Their presence could help protect everyone. Around the fire, generations existed together. A child might sit beside someone who had lived through decades of changing landscapes and difficult winters. Stories, skills, and traditions passed quietly between them. Human survival was built upon this invisible connection. The knowledge of one person could become the protection of many. Friendship also played an important role. The people around the fire were not simply co-workers trying to survive. They shared moments of happiness. They comforted each other after loss. They celebrated successful days. They supported one another through difficult ones. A successful hunt was not only about the animal brought home. It was about everyone who helped make it possible. The person who prepared the tools, the person who tracked the path, the person who kept the fire alive while others were away, the person who prepared the meal afterward. Behind every achievement was a network of cooperation. Even small acts carried meaning, sharing food with someone who was tired, helping repair damaged clothing, carrying supplies for an injured member of the group. These actions strengthened the community. They reminded everyone that survival was a shared journey. Perhaps this is why humans were able to spread across such different environments, from frozen landscapes to warmer regions, from forests to open plains. People carried something more powerful than any weapon. They carried each other. Inside a Stone Age shelter, the sound of laughter may have been just as important as the sound of a hunting spear being sharpened, a child playing near the fire, two friends sharing a quiet conversation, a parent comforting a frightened child during a storm. These moments rarely leave physical evidence behind. No stone tool can show them, no cave painting can fully capture them, but they were real, and they were essential, because survival is not only measured by how long someone lives, it is also measured by the connections they create along the way. The ancient people who lived during the Stone Age faced challenges that seem unimaginable today, yet they still experienced emotions that feel deeply familiar: love, trust, loyalty, grief, hope. The same feelings that connect families today once existed beside fires burning beneath prehistoric skies. As the night settles over the valley, the shelter becomes quiet again, the flames move gently, children sleep safely. Adults prepare for tomorrow. Everyone knows that another difficult day will come, but they also know something equally important: they will not face it alone, because in a world filled with uncertainty, the greatest tool humans ever created was not made from stone or bone. It was cooperation, and yet, even with strong families, clever tools, and deep knowledge, life in the Stone Age remained incredibly demanding. There were struggles that followed every sunrise, challenges that tested the limits of human endurance, and soon we will look closer at the hardest parts of everyday life in this ancient world. The morning arrives quietly over the ancient landscape. The first light touches the frozen ground, revealing a world that is both beautiful and demanding. The forests remain calm, the rivers continue flowing, the mountains stand silently in the distance. But for the people living in the Stone Age, another day does not begin with comfort or certainty. It begins with questions. Will there be enough food? Will the weather change? Will the shelter remain strong? Will everyone return safely? Life was filled with moments of wonder, but beneath that beauty existed a constant struggle. Every part of survival required effort, every resource required patience, every mistake could carry consequences. Perhaps the hardest challenge was uncertainty. Today, many people know where their next meal will come from. They can prepare for storms with forecasts and protect themselves from cold with modern homes and technology. But thousands of years ago, the future was hidden. A successful hunt could provide plenty, a failed hunt could mean hunger, a warm season could bring abundance, a harsh winter could test an entire community. Nothing was guaranteed. Food was one of the greatest challenges. Finding enough nourishment required constant movement and awareness. Animals migrated. Plants grew only during certain seasons. Rivers changed with weather. A person could know the landscape extremely well and still face difficult days. There were times when empty baskets returned to the shelter, times when hunters followed tracks for hours only to discover the animals had moved away, times when the cold lasted longer than expected. During these moments, survival depended on sharing. A single person struggling alone had fewer chances. A community working together could endure hardship. Another challenge was illness and injury. A small wound that seems minor today could become serious without modern medicine. A broken bone could change someone's ability to travel or gather food. A severe infection could threaten a life, yet humans adapted by caring for one another. Evidence from ancient remains suggests that some individuals survived injuries that would have made independent survival nearly impossible. This means someone helped them, someone provided food, someone offered protection, someone stayed beside them. Compassion was not created by modern society, it existed beside ancient fires. The environment itself created endless difficulties. Extreme temperatures could be dangerous, a sudden storm could interrupt plans, long journeys across unfamiliar terrain required careful preparation. Even simple tasks demanded energy: collecting wood, preparing hides, making tools, gathering plants, cooking food, maintaining shelter. There was no moment when everything was finished forever. Every day brought another set of responsibilities. The body carried the evidence of this lifestyle: long walks, physical labor, exposure to the elements, the constant need to adapt. Life was active and demanding in ways many modern people would find exhausting. But hardship did not mean misery. This is an important difference. People living in the Stone Age did not spend every moment wishing for a different world. This was their world. They knew its rhythms. They understood its dangers. They found happiness within it: a warm fire after a cold journey, a successful gathering, a child learning a new skill, a meal shared with family. Small victories carried great meaning. Perhaps this is one of the most interesting lessons from ancient life. Comfort does not always come from having everything. Sometimes it comes from understanding what you have. The Stone Age was difficult, but it was also filled with moments of connection and achievement. Each day survived was proof of knowledge, cooperation, and resilience. As evening approaches, the community begins preparing once again. Tools are checked, food is stored, the shelter is strengthened. Tomorrow is still uncertain. But preparation creates confidence. The people of this ancient world cannot control everything that happens around them. They cannot stop storms. They cannot remove every danger. They cannot guarantee success, but they can prepare, they can remember, they can learn, and that ability may be the greatest reason humans continued forward through countless generations. The fire burns softly as another night arrives. The valley becomes dark. The challenges of today slowly become memories. But before sleep comes, there is one final responsibility. The community must look ahead, because survival is not only about surviving the day that has passed, it is about preparing for the day that is waiting beyond the horizon. The night has nearly passed. The stars slowly begin to fade above the ancient landscape, and the first hints of morning light appear beyond the distant mountains. Inside the shelter, the world remains quiet. The fire has become a bed of glowing embers. The sleeping figures slowly begin to move. A new day is approaching. For people living in the Stone Age, morning was not simply the beginning of another routine, it was the beginning of another opportunity. Another chance to find food. Another chance to learn. Another chance to protect the people they loved. But before anyone stepped into the wilderness, preparation was essential. Survival was built on small decisions made again and again. The first task was often checking what remained from the night before. Was there enough firewood? Was the shelter still secure? Were the tools ready? Had anything changed while everyone slept? A small problem ignored in the morning could become a serious danger later. A damaged tool could mean failure during a hunt. A weak shelter could allow cold winds to enter. A forgotten supply could make a difficult journey even harder. Experience taught people to think ahead. Near the edge of the shelter, someone carefully examined stone tools created over many hours of work. A sharp edge is tested, a wooden handle is checked, a damaged piece is repaired rather than immediately replaced. In the Stone Age, objects were valuable because every item required time, skill, and effort to create. A tool was not simply an object, it represented knowledge, it represented patience, it represented the ability of humans to shape the world around them. Nearby, others prepare the supplies needed for the coming day. Containers are checked, food gathered from previous days is counted, clothing is adjusted for the weather. The group observes the sky and the landscape, searching for signs of what the day might bring. The position of clouds, the direction of wind, the behavior of animals. Nature provided information for those who knew how to notice it. A quiet morning could reveal important clues. Perhaps animals were moving toward a certain area. Perhaps changing weather suggested staying closer to shelter. Perhaps the season was beginning to shift. The environment was constantly communicating. Humans survived by paying attention. Before leaving, the group also considered each person's role. Some would travel farther. Some would remain closer to the shelter. Some would care for children. Some would gather resources nearby. Not every day required the same actions. Life changed with the seasons. A summer morning could mean searching for plants and traveling across open landscapes. A winter morning might require protecting warmth and carefully managing limited supplies. Flexibility was one of humanity's greatest strengths. The ability to change plans, the ability to learn from mistakes, the ability to adapt when the world changed. As the sun rises higher, the shelter slowly comes alive. Children wake and begin another day of discovery. Adults prepare to leave. Elders share reminders about safe paths and familiar places. The final pieces of equipment are gathered. The fire is protected carefully because it represents something too valuable to lose. Then, one by one, people step outside. The cold morning air surrounds them. The landscape stretches ahead, a world filled with possibilities and uncertainty. They do not know exactly what the day will bring. They cannot predict every challenge, but they carry something powerful with them: experience, memory, the support of their community. These invisible tools are just as important as the stone blades and wooden spears they carry. The group moves slowly into the ancient landscape. Footprints appear briefly in the soil before disappearing beneath the endless movement of nature. Behind them, the shelter remains quiet. Ahead of them, another day of survival begins. And yet, after all the effort, after all the challenges, after all the searching and preparation, there is still something deeply peaceful about this ancient way of life. The simple rhythm of waking with the sun, following the seasons, working with the land, returning home beneath the stars, a rhythm that connected humans directly to the world around them. As the day continues, the memories created by these people will slowly become part of the endless story of humanity. But eventually, the journey must come to an end. The fire will become quiet, the voices will fade, the shelter will return to silence, and one final night will arrive, a night beneath the same stars that watched over countless generations before us. The final night arrives quietly. The ancient valley rests beneath a sky filled with countless stars. The same stars that watched over endless generations before this moment continue shining above the mountains, forests, and rivers of the Ice Age world. Inside the shelter, the familiar sounds of the day slowly disappear. The movement of tools stops. The voices around the fire become softer. The footsteps that once carried people through the landscape now become still. Another day of survival has ended, and for a brief moment, there is nothing left to do. The fire burns gently in the center of the shelter, no longer needed for cooking or preparation. It simply provides comfort. A small circle of warmth surrounded by the enormous darkness outside. Around it, the people of the Stone Age settle into their sleeping places. The same hands that shaped stone tools, the same feet that crossed frozen valleys, the same eyes that watched over children and searched the horizon for danger, now they close peacefully. It is easy to imagine ancient humans only as survivors, hunters, gatherers, people constantly fighting against nature. But beneath all of those challenges was something much more familiar. They were people. They had quiet moments. They had friendships. They had curiosity. They had dreams. Their world was different from ours, but their feelings were not. A parent watching over a sleeping child, a friend sharing stories beside a fire, an elder remembering places that no longer exist, a young person wondering what tomorrow might bring. These moments connected them to every generation that came after. The shelter grows darker as the fire slowly fades. Outside, the night continues moving, the wind passes through the valley, animals travel through the distant forests, the rivers continue their ancient journey. The world does not stop, but inside the shelter, humans rest, protected by the things they created, their tools, their clothing, their shelter, their community, their ability to adapt. Looking back at their lives, one thing becomes clear: the greatest achievement of Stone Age humans was not simply surviving harsh conditions, it was finding ways to create meaning within them. They transformed stone into tools. They transformed animal hides into warmth. They transformed caves into homes. They transformed sounds into communication. They transformed memories into stories. And eventually, they transformed simple marks on walls into art that would survive thousands of years. Every invention, every lesson, and every connection began with ordinary people trying to live another day. People who woke before sunrise. People who searched for food. People who protected their families. People who looked at the same sky we see today. Perhaps the most surprising thing about the Stone Age is how close it feels. When we imagine these ancient people sitting beside their fires, watching shadows move across cave walls, they no longer seem like strangers from a distant past, they seem like ancestors, because they are. Every person alive today carries a connection to those ancient moments. Somewhere in our distant history, humans stood beneath these same stars. They felt the cold wind, they watched the flames, they listened to the sounds of the night. They wondered about the world around them, and they continued forward. The final embers begin to glow softly, the shelter becomes completely silent. Above the valley, the stars remain unchanged. They have witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. They have watched humans leave caves and build cities. They have seen people create wonders beyond anything Stone Age families could have imagined. Yet the beginning was here, in the quiet darkness, beside a simple fire, with a small group of humans choosing to survive together. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson hidden inside this ancient world. Human history was never only about powerful rulers, great battles, or enormous monuments. It was also about ordinary people, people whose names were forgotten, people whose faces disappeared with time, people who simply woke up each morning and tried their best. Their stories were not written in books, they were written in the tools they created, the shelters they built, the art they left behind, and the generations that followed. So tonight, as you return from this journey through the Stone Age, remember, the distance between us and our ancient ancestors is not measured only by thousands of years, it is measured by everything they gave us, their curiosity, their creativity, their courage, their desire to survive, because beneath the modern world, beneath the cities and technology, there is still a small connection to that ancient fire.